We are going to be going over centaurs, centaur anatomy, centaurs in general. We are going to be focusing on the skeletal structure. If you want to understand how to draw what's on top, you're going to have to understand what's underneath as well. So in order to understand how to connect a human to a horse, we need to understand how we as people normally connect. Let's talk about the human skeleton for a moment. I'm going to go over a couple of things that are kind of necessary to understand. Up here at the top, we have this little funky thing. We know it as the collarbone. If you kind of touch right in front of your neck, and then like those hard sections of like the upper top of your torso, like around your neck, that you'll feel your collarbone. The collarbone connects to your shoulder bones, which are also called your scapula, and your scapula will connect to your collarbones by the, oh my god, it's the acromion process, right? So the acromion process will connect to your collarbone, and that is where the top of your shoulder is. So this whole section, if I was to draw it separately, we have our collarbones that kind of like this, they connect to the sternum right here, and then wrap around, and there's a bone here. The acromion process is right here. You can feel the acromion process. If you touch the top of your shoulder, you feel something hard. You know when like you kind of have like the top of your shoulder, it's really hard, just at like a single point? That's your acromion process. Your acromion process is right there. It will connect to your scapula, which is part of the scapular spine. This is called the shoulder girdle. The shoulder girdle is what supports your arms and their movement, which is the scapula, acromion process, and your clavicle. And then connected to all that as well is our rib cage. We don't need to go over the ribs too much. And this is our vertebrae, or our spine, which has 4 parts. So there's 4 parts of our spine that we need to go over, right? The main ones. 4? 3. We only need 3. We're gonna go over the one that's on the neck. So our neck vertebrae is our cervical. The one that's in our chest area, our upper back, is our thoracic. And our lower back is our lumbar. This one down here, this is called our pelvic girdle. So the pelvic girdle supports your legs and their movement, right? That's how our skeleton works. If we look at a horse skeleton, it's actually the exact same. We're both mammals. They still have the cervical vertebrae, the thoracic vertebrae, the lumbar is over here. The pelvis is right here, so this is their supportive pelvic bone. This is the ischium, if you want to know. If you ever sat in somebody's lap, or if like your parents were holding you at some point and they were like, you have a bony butt, that bone is your ischium. It's your sitting bone. So the pelvic bone, same thing. We also have our scapula and our acromion process, the clavicle. This is our supportive girdle. They're actually standing on their nails. If we were to translate that, right, we have an arm. If we just translated this as if it was like a human arm, they're standing like this on a single finger, and a hoof is a giant nail. That's how you think of it. Because this right here is like their wrist, quote unquote, or their ankle. Well, technically this is their carpal. The elbow is right here, really, because the humerus is right here, and then this is the radius and ulna. That's how a horse's arm structure works.
A big question we get a lot during streams and on the channel is advice on how to start as a content creator, and we always tend to recommend starting with budget-friendly assets before moving on to something new. But today's sponsor, Wondershare DemoCreator, can be used by pros and beginners alike. Wondershare DemoCreator is a simple-to-use video recorder and editor rolled into one software for learners, educators, freelancers, and gamers alike. The video editor uses many easy-to-use features to make editing quick while still looking professionally made, such as filters, auto-generated captions, and overlays. Not only this, but the video recorder has live editing capabilities such as adding arrows, magnifying specific spots on your screen, and adding spotlights onto specific areas of your work. This makes the video editing pipeline much quicker and easier, especially if you're an aspiring art tutorial channel, an artist in general, or are a teacher or student who needs to make a video presentation for your class. Speaking of the video recorder, not only does it have a webcam capturing software and overlays built into it, but it also has VTubing capabilities with a hand motion tracker, which is far more advanced than any free-to-try software has any right being. As someone who knows how much work and effort goes into making a VTuber, having an easily accessible one right at your fingertips is huge. Be sure to try out Wondershare DemoCreator for yourself with the link in the description, and thank you once again for sponsoring this video.
So horse and humans are both mammals. So we share very, very similar structures. We're not that different. It's just like I was explaining, we all have the same shoulder girdle. We all have the same kind of general structure for our appendicular skeleton. So we all share very, very similar structures, and it makes it far easier to turn us into centaurs because our structures are already so similar. So let's talk about how we would actually do that. Now that we've gone over the sciencey stuff that we need, what we're gonna do is I pointed out the vertebrae for you. Notice that a human has a vertebrae, so does a horse. So the horse's vertebrae, this one right here is the cervical vertebrae. The cervical vertebrae up here on a human is right here. So we start with the cervical, then we go to the thoracic, then we go to the lumbar. Right here is where then we would connect it to the coccyx vertebrae. No, the coccyx is down here. This is the, no, hang on. Give me a second. the sacrum. This is the sacrum. So the lumbar would connect to the sacrum down here, but that's not really gonna work when it's a centaur. We wanna get rid of these human legs. So let's cut it off here. We cut it off at the lumbar, and then the lumbar can connect to a horse's thoracic. This is your L1. Your L1 can then just connect into the humans, and then you'll have your rib cage up here and the rest of it like this. So now the horse's shoulder girdle will be replacing our pelvic girdle. So it's almost like we have two shoulder girdles in a weird way. If I was to very, very quickly draw this, we have our rib cage like this, and then our lumbar, which then connects to the horse's thoracic. So our horse has their scapula right here, rib cage.
If you'd like to support the channel and the creation of free arts education, become a member on Patreon for working files, behind-the-scenes posts, and discounts on our class offerings.
And their tailbone continues. A comparison to ours that ends. So it would be like this. They connect to there. And then once you understand that, then it becomes a topical thing. And the thing that some people do that I personally really like to stylize, even though we've gotten rid of the pelvic girdle, some people replace the pelvic girdle. We have on the top of our pelvis, right here, this is called our iliac crest. If you were to touch the top of your hips, you'll feel it. It's this hard edge kind of on the top of your hips. That's your iliac crest poking out. On more muscular people, if you've ever seen somebody draw like a torso and they do this thing where it kind of, men call it their deep V, I've learned. These kind of bridging things, this is the top of your iliac crest poking out. I know that the muscle there is the external obliques. Something obliques. Your obliques. That's what these fun things are, but it's also placed at the top of the pelvic girdle. So what a lot of people do if they're stylizing a centaur is they will still add in those like obliques. So if we've got like this going on, got kind of a person here, I'll still add like external obliques. But like now it's the shoulder girdle, but we'll still add them as if they're like mimicking the obliques that come down onto this person like this. You see, like, adding the iliac crests in for flavor. So the iliac crests, even though they're technically not really there, we can pretend that they are, even though it's the scapular bone there. The beautiful thing about fantasy creatures is that literally all of this anatomy is, like, scuffed to be as close as possible, but it'll never be perfect. It's why a lot of, like, bird people are like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. A lot of it is scuffed. Like they're like, oh, a bird's anatomy is built like this, so it won't work if you put it here. Of course it won't work. We weren't built to have wings. Aesthetically, a lot of people just keep their arms the exact same as a human because these are a horse's arms, quote unquote. They're certainly longer than a human's arms because, you know, they have to walk like this. So what a lot of people do is like, rather than like have the arms go all the way down here, what they do is they have it so it's like, if a person wants to grab something off the ground, they have it so they buckle down like this. And then they grab them.
Join a virtual class to learn live from our professional artists. Get creative assignments, individual guidance, and real-time feedback on your artwork. Start today and level up your practice. If you learned something new, like and share this with a fellow art nerd. If you love receiving quality and free arts education, subscribe. Here's a couple other videos you can check out next.